just so we're all sort of starting at the same place with a drawing file that looks and behaves about the same, I would like us all to download this AutoCAD drawing template for ART 559. And we will be using this for the next couple of exercises as a common starting point, and you might want to adapt it from there as you decide on layer colors and fonts and stuff for your own use, but it's a good place to start. So it's here in my downloads folder. I'm just going to drag it onto my desktop. Here it is in downloads, and I'm just going to drag it from here over onto my desktop. At that point, we're done with File Explorer and Blackboard. While we're at it with Windows, I know some of you are working on Macs and might be unfamiliar with it. But when a file is created onto the desktop, Windows puts them all over here in a column here, and then in a column here, and a column here. And it's really easy to get data files mixed up with application files. You get Acrobat over there and AutoCAD over there. So I make a point of keeping my applications all over here and letting the files themselves pile up on this side, where it's easy to tell what I want to get rid of or hang on to. So to actually use this template in AutoCAD, the folder that AutoCAD looks for template files is like up like 6 or 8 folders down, and it might be different on your computer than mine, depending on how things are set up. So this is the way just to get this template into AutoCAD so it knows where it is, and you can always come back and use it again and again and again. So what we do here, as outlined here in the middle of this first page, is to double click this file, which will open it in AutoCAD. And starting AutoCAD with a template, basically a template is an AutoCAD drawing that just has all its settings set the way you want. It doesn't have any geometry in it yet, but it has fonts and layers and that kind of stuff. So that's what this contains. And what I want to do is go to File, Save As. This over here, Save As. And I want to save this as a drawing template. As a drawing template. And when AutoCAD sees you want to save it as a template, it's automatically going to stick it into the templates folder, wherever that is down in your hard drive. C/user/bill/appdata/locals. You know, you can. I have no idea where that is. So I just say, okay, and I want to call it the same name again. ART 559. Let's call it ART 559 template. Save. Okay. So let me just close out of this just so we can start cleanly. So typically you'll come back to AutoCAD this way, and if we go to New, it gives a list of templates, and I'm using this one, ART 55. This is leftover from, that's the one I just opened. What I actually want to use is this one right here, ART 559 template. And it will start AutoCAD the way that I'm expecting this all to work. One of the settings that a template has in it is the units that a particular drawing is going to be working with. And if you're just set with metric units, which expect no dimension indicators, and you type 1 foot 3 and 1 foot 3 and 5/16 inches, you won't know what to do with the foot and inch marks. So already built into this drawing are the units, which are already set to architectural. And I'm going to set them to a precision of a 32nd of an inch. We can get to that in a bit, but that's appropriate. The grid command, we can turn on and off the grid. It can be distracting or it can be helpful. And the grid button down here just lets you choose which one of those you want to have. How far apart are those? We can zoom in on them. If you right-click the grid button, you get the option for grid settings, where it tells you how big that grid is. And basically the grid we're showing here is set up to be 1 foot by 1 foot with a heavier line every 8 of those, just for, it could be 8 or 10 or 12, whatever you feel like. And then we have an option over here to have the cursor snap only to distances and increments of 1 inch, or rather within the within each of these 1 foot by 1 foot ones, only to snap to like a true 1 inch by 1 inch, not 1.25 inches. However, we're going to be dealing with eighths and quarters of an inch as we map these various spaces. So we'll leave that turned off. We won't be snapping to the grid points themselves, just using it as a reference. If I had adaptive grid checked, as I zoom in, it would keep it would show me first a 1 foot grid and then a 1 inch grid and then a 1/8 inch grid, which is really disorienting. It's nice if the grid stays as something that's a known that you can refer back to. So I always have this turned off. This one really doesn't matter. To what extent did you guys deal with the coordinate systems at all? Okay, well, AutoCAD's a big world. It goes forever. It has an origin. Just like doing graphs in 8th grade algebra or whatever. We have an XY coordinate system with X being numbers that increase in this direction from 0 and Y ones that increase in that direction from 0. So a point out here would be like 8 feet in the X and 8 feet in the Y. Okay, in the work we do, we're really never concerned where things are in relation to some absolute 0 point. We are interested in the relative distance between two things, or the relative length of a line from here to here, or from the corner of one thing to the corner of another. So we're really not dealing with these absolute locations that you do in geometry, but rather just with where one thing is in relationship to another one. And so while we're thinking about that, I do want to come back to the two kinds of dimensions and distances we're going to be interested in. And one is we've got a corner of a room and a column, not just how big the column is, but where it is in relation to the rest of that stuff. So these are just the same dimensions. It's just that you need both of those for most kinds of objects. This ribbon can be kind of a daunting interface for stuff. So like everything that AutoCAD can do is going to be in there somehow. Each of these has a zillion options, and the options have options. A simpler way to look at this is with AutoCAD's original menu system, which we can get at here. If we click this down arrow and pick Show Menu Bar, then we get this nice little menu, which just has if we go to the Draw menu, it's got the things that you can draw. It's some people use only this when they're drafting with AutoCAD if they don't need all the razzle dazzle that's on the ribbon. So however we do it, let's just say by picking the line command off of here, as you can turn that fade off. You can draw lines and keep drawing lines as much as you want. I find these running dimensions and angles, to me, they're just distracting. F12 will turn them off. Oh, funny. F12 does something else in the program that runs my little pointer. Just a second. Where is that? F12. Okay, that's better. You start running several programs at once, and they each interpret the function keys to do something different. So those are sort of random lengths. If I go back to the line command again, which I can pick off that menu, I can pick off the one of these menus, or I can type the word line. This used to be the way you would interface with AutoCAD. If you click a point and then indicate a direction and then type a distance, like 10 feet, it'll draw a 10-foot line at whatever angle your cursor indicated. So you're spared having to locate the cursor exactly to make something 10 feet long. You just start here and go 10 feet. And that's the essence of the word vector, which we get it from physics or something, which just means a distance at a direction. That's all that vector means. So a line is something that's drawn a distance in a given direction. Moving something is something you move a distance in a direction. If we turn ortho mode on, which lock the cursor moving over only in vertical and horizontal dimensions, directions. So if we turn that on, and with all of these, the light blue background means it's active. It's toggled on, and the plain background means it's not operative. So with this, if I pick the line command again, which incidentally I can shorten just to L and hit enter. If I just click once, and then my cursor is locked into being vertical or horizontal. So I just get it generally vertical, type 10 feet, go generally horizontal, go 3 feet, go generally vertical again, and go 8 feet. You can see I can work my way right around the perimeter of a building, a room, if I just measured all those pieces, almost without taking eye off the screen or hand off the mouse. There are other ways of doing this, but if everything you need to measure is horizontal and vertical, this is by far the easiest. And I think I'll turn off the grid. That's just bothersome. If I got up to here and then realized I forgot to measure this one over to the other wall, but I did remember to measure the whole overall width of the room, which I recommend over and over and over again. The first 2 dimensions you take should be the longest ones that you can see, just so you have this frame of reference. Then the offset command comes in. What offset will do is take anything that you've drawn and create another version of it parallel to that. So it's with a vertical line, it's easy, it just goes over. You could use the copy command. But if you want to get something that's exactly away from the angled one, to copy it, you'd have to do a lot of, square root of 2 or so. I don't know what's going on. So, but offset will do that. And you're also given the choice of which side of the original you want that to be, either interior or exterior. So instead of using the copy command, I use offset all the time, which I'm going to say specify a distance. Let's say that was 25 feet, 6 inches. Then I pick the line I want, and it'll let me preview it in a couple of different, the only 2 places it can be. So say it's over there. And then I can start drawing this line from there. And then you're always faced with the issue of making things join at corners. I could drag the ends up and then trim them off, but the fillet command, and we're only going to use like 5 commands today. So it's line, offset, fillet, and maybe trim. Fillet, F-I-L-E-T, the shortcut is F. Let you pick 2 lines, and it'll just extend them up to each other. You can also put an optional radius on that if you want, but I mostly use it without it. So here we have that. Because this one is offset straight over there, I know that these 2 points are already lined up vertically, so I can just do L for line, come to here, and come to here, and close out the room. So at this point, I have, let's say, the inside of the room done. If I want to give the walls some thickness, I'll use O for offset again. Type in a new distance. So you can see how useful it is having this up top, just where you can see it. If it's down here somewhere or sort of floating and it just is hard to see, let's say that these are all, let's make them all 6 inches for a bit. While we're talking about dimensions, when you're in the architectural units, inches are understood. You don't even have to put the double quote mark or 2 single quote. Who knows? Just leave them out. You don't need them. And there we can pick here. I'll just start. Almost all these commands repeat. And then I've got 2 conditions here. Clean these up. So F for fillet will do those guys. And I could use fillet in here as well. Even if these lines do cross, it'll bring them back to meeting. And with all these, you select the part that you want to keep. So I want to keep this part and keep this part. So I'll pick this and that. Another way to do it if things are a little more complicated, is to use the trim command, which will basically erase any part of an object until it hits another one in either direction. And that's a nice one too. And it'll just depend on what you're trying to accomplish. It turns out that FILLET will do all these. It's funny, I mostly use Revit now, so sort of getting back into the swing of AutoCAD it's like, doing French after a year abroad in Spain or something or other. It's a little odd, but AutoCAD has it worked out so that when you finish a command, just hitting the spacebar or the enter key will repeat that command. And why the spacebar? I think it's because left-handed people didn't have to want to reach all the way over to the enter key, so anybody can just hit the spacebar with their thumb. So I'm going to hit the spacebar, which brings up that command again. Spacebar, command, spacebar, command. Anyway, so AutoCAD can be very productive and very fast. And I would like you to concentrate on the productive and accurate part of it and work towards being fast. If you want to enter a line that's not perfectly vertical, let's say you want to do something that's 10 feet long at a 45-degree angle, to me, the easiest way to do that is L for line, click a point. I'm going to turn the ortho off because I don't want to get locked into that. So off here somewhere is a point that's 10 feet at 45 degrees. And the way you tell AutoCAD that is say, okay, go, head off this way and do 10 feet. And then at the angle of 45. The angle of 45. Why did it go down? I love this. Oh, I know why. Okay, here's where that absolute coordinates versus relative coordinates comes in. When I said go to 10 feet at 45 degrees, AutoCAD assumes that means from 0, 0, go 10 feet at 45 degrees. And that's that point. What I need to do is specifically tell Revit, AutoCAD, to go from this point, go 10 at 45 degrees. So line, and to do that, you use the at sign, which means from where I'm at 10 feet angle 45. At 10 feet at 45 degrees. Okay, so that's what I was expecting to happen there. And that's the kind of thing you use. Cherokee's apartment is, it's all sort of funny angles. I don't know if they're 45 degrees or not, but you might find yourself using that sort of a tool to do that. The other way to enter that 10 feet at 45 degrees would be, remember I used F12 to turn off the distance and angle tabs. I'll use F12 again to turn those back on again. Let me toggle that back off. I can do that here. I don't have that tool turned on, but basically these are the options that you can have displayed down here if you want them. So I'm going to keep turned on this one called dynamic input, which is this one. And with that turned on, if I type line, then I'm getting two fields. The first one is the distance. Let's do 10 feet again. And then I'll hit tab to get over to the angle field where I can type 45. I can, let's say I want to go horizontally and I still have all this going on. I can do 8 feet, tab, 0. That's sort of a lot of work to draw a horizontal line. To me, I'd probably just use F8 to turn the ortho on. Why so many different ways of doing things? I think it's because whenever either users or the programmers at Autodesk figured out another or better way to do something. They left the old way in just for people who were used to it to keep on working that way. So there's a lot of what we call legacy code, legacy operations. You know, there must be 5 different ways to draw a line, which is a little silly. In Revit, there's one. Okay, a couple of things here I'll call your attention to on the bottom of page 3, which has to do with the number of ways that you can input distances into AutoCAD. Sometimes things are measured and then entered as feet, inches, and fractional inches. Sometimes your inches is just easier, 147 3/4 inches. Sometimes if you're using this tape on the yellow side, it's in decimal feet. So 1.5 feet, you know, that's you know, there are 10 divisions in a foot that engineers and surveyors use, not the 12 that architects use. So AutoCAD can accommodate pretty much all of those dimensions, no matter if you took it with the laser or your hand tape or the decimal tape here. A number of different ways to enter the same distance, 13.5 inches. You can do it as 13.5, that's fine. You don't need the inch mark. 1.125 feet, any way you want to do that. The important thing for all of those is not to put spaces in any of those dimensions. It's not like 3 feet space 2 inches. As soon as you hit the enter key or the space bar, it thinks you mean 3 feet. And you're going to bump into that, and you just deal with it. And this is even more important. You know, whenever you're drafting in any CAD program, you're always drawing at the full scale of something. You never think, well, I know I want to plot this at 1/4 equals a foot. So if that wall is 12 feet long, I'll draw it 3 inches long. You never do that. You draw it 12 feet long, and then scale your print down when the time comes. Just like zooming in and out of an image or something like that. So you won't need your scale rules at all ever using CAD. The only time you need them might be to measure off a finished drawing to see how big something is. Okay, a couple things I've been using without calling your attention to them are, in addition to being able to use the grid to keep things organized sort of vertically and horizontally, which most of the built world does, AutoCAD is highly evolved to recognize geometric conditions and to use them as the starting point for, or the end point for creating objects, moving objects, copying objects, that kind of stuff. So for instance, if I want to start a line, let's turn this off for a second. This button down here is the object snap button, which means AutoCAD can find endpoints, midpoints, intersections, that kind of stuff. If I turn it off, I want to draw a line from this corner, I get pretty close. Looks good from here, but if you zoom in, no, it's not there. So what object snap does, we turn that back on again, is let you snap to any of the following conditions. The end of something, the midpoint of something, the center of a circle, and this is a new one, the geometric center, which is like the centroid of a closed bounded shape. The quadrant points of a circle, which are 12, 3, 6, and 9 o'clock, where any two things intersect, two circles, a line and a circle. Extension is where one object might hit another if it continued up there. Does that projection? Insertion point, we'll deal with that when we start dealing with blocks, like a custom-made chair, like what is its little handle. Perpendicular, we'll get to these, but for right now, I think endpoint, midpoint, center, intersection, quadrant would be use perpendicular. If you have too many of these turned on, your cursor starts flashing up sort of every time you move across stuff. Pretty much any given project will be, if you're doing gears, obviously you want to have the center, be able to snap to the center of things. Not so much in a lot of our work. But anyway, with those turned on, whichever ones are checked, and with this turned on, and F3 turns that on and off, as you can see down here at the bottom. With that turned on, if I want to draw out in space, let's say draw rectangle. I don't have to be on a point. I can certainly just draw a rectangle out here without AutoCAD trying to find the nearest endpoint or something or other. But, and rec is the shortcut for rectangle. But if I get within a certain radius, which is sort of shown by the size of the green circle, if I get even close, it's going to come in and snap right to that. So I can snap to there. Let's say I want to draw a rectangle from there. Let's do a line to the midpoint of here. It'll start to find that midpoint. And each of these have their own characteristic shape. Center of a circle is a little circle, endpoint's a square, midpoint's a triangle. It sort of ran out after a while. I can do it there and then keep on doing these midpoint ones. Create a diamond inside that. If you want to get close to something but not hit it, let's say I wanted my line to start right where the cursor is, but not on that one. I can use F3 to turn snaps off, come in, get just as close as I want. Turn it back on to snap to the end of that. So you can change those right in the middle of a command, depending on what that next actual point happens to need. And speaking of next point, let's say I don't have center turned on. But I'm drawing a line from here, and I want to get to the center of that circle. Well, it's finding everything else, but it's not finding the center. If I want for just this one next time, I'm not drawing lots of gears, I just this one time want to get to the center of that circle, I can use Shift right click. It will bring up the snap just for the very next point I pick. So for that one, I'll say center. So it's not finding any of the others, it's just finding center. And I can be on the object or over the center point itself. And now when I come back, center is no longer active, but all the others are. So we just sort of switched out of our 4 or 5 being active to just one, just to hone right in on that one point, and then come back to our normal way of working. I know this is a chunk, but it all feeds into doing stuff with accuracy. And in terms of the degree of accuracy, if we were laying out this building, this room, which of course you are, for let's say interior design purposes, getting things to the nearest quarter of an inch is plenty. Nobody should be worrying about 30 seconds or 1/16 of an inch, maybe an eighth. And I say an eighth only because most drywall walls on metal studs are 4 7/8 inches thick total. So you'd like to be able to acknowledge that and not just round it up to 5. So let's say I want to come back and check that I've drawn this room correctly. Let's get rid of all this while we're at it. The erase command is just E, and you can window things and get rid of them like that. There's sort of 2 ways of looking at this. One is, do I want to know how far it is between 2 points, or do I want to know how long an object is? And there are at least 3 different ways to find out how far it is from here up to here. And one would be just to select the line itself. And then in its properties, we can go down and see that its length is 10 feet. And that's because we set units, we said to the nearest 32nd of an inch, that'll give that to the nearest 32nd of an inch. So that's there, that's nice to know. What if we want to know how far it is from here to here, because we got to move a big table through there? There's no object there I can select. I could draw a line and query it. Let's try that as one option. So that's 5'4" and 5'4.5". If you got a 5-foot table, you're fine. If you got a 6-foot table, you don't. Another way would be to use the DIST command, whose shortcut is DI. And it will tell you up top here, the actual distance is 5'4" and 17/32, our same one. It also gives you the X distance and the Y distance. None of those are as useful as having that you have to remember that. None of those is as useful as actually having a dimension there that's telling you what's going on. And there are a couple of ways to do that. One is by picking an object and pulling its dimension off. The other is by picking 2 points between them. So you can do that either way. So if I want to do this wall, I can use dimension. Let's use linear is going to be a horizontal or vertical dimension. It's saying specify the first extension line origin. I'll do that. I'll do those. And we see that that's 10 feet. So that's sort of locked to those endpoints. If I want to just be able to select the object itself, I can go dimension linear. And it says select the first extension line origin or select an object. And if I hit enter, then I can actually just select an object and drag a dimension off it, which is a pretty nice tool. And just practicing with those will make it more useful. A lot of AutoCAD is frankly paying attention to the prompts up here at the top. There's a little conversation going between what you've started and then what AutoCAD needs next, or what it would like to see. Doing this room would be a useful operation. One reason for doing it in here is if you realize you forgot a measurement or maybe you mismeasured something, it's going to be easy to check while you're here. What if I want a dimension from here to here? I don't care about those horizontal or linear dimensions. I want an angled dimension, which AutoCAD calls aligned. So I've got my object snaps turned on, so it'll go right to there, and then you drag it up to where you want to see it. So it's not hard. It's pretty easy stuff. Getting sort of used to the flow of what AutoCAD wants when it wants it is just part of the deal. I mean, when you're driving a car, you got to push the clutch in before you shift the gears. I mean, I know you don't anymore, but you don't shift the gears and then push in the clutch. One thing I haven't covered yet, I've done a couple of times, is to select objects. Let me do some circles. Circle. So I'm just hitting the space bar after I create a circle to repeat the command. Let me turn that off. If I want to select things, there's several different ways to pick them. If we want to move them, erase them, change their color, whatever. And one is just to keep picking them. And AutoCAD creates what's called a selection set. And as you pick things, they get added to the set. If you realize I didn't want to do that, you type U for undo, and it'll go back. AutoCAD works in 2 basic ways. It used to be you'd give a command. AutoCAD, like move, AutoCAD would say, what do you want to move? You'd pick them, hit enter, give a starting point and an ending point. That's called verb-object operation. With the Mac and then with Windows, it became the norm to pick things first and then tell a program what to do with them. Like pick things and then erase them, pick things and then move them, as opposed to move and then picking the things themselves. I know, dry, but you have the option within AutoCAD of doing it either way you want. So you can pick move from a menu and pick things, or you can pick things and use the move command. The first way, the command and then picking the object would be move. I'll pick a couple things. I hit enter, then I pick a start point and an end point for them to move. If I pick one thing, I can just move it with its grip. If I pick 2 things, I then have to use the move command, which will be up here, M, and then I can move them together. If you have numerous objects to move, but don't want to pick them one by one, you have several options. There are 2 basic functions. I'll start the move command just to make clear what's going on. If I click outside, and then I'm not dragging, I just clicked once, and then click again, I get a blue window that selects everything that's completely contained inside it. So if I drag this up here, it will no longer select these guys. They need to be completely contained. Hit enter because I'm done picking, and then move them. That's called a windowed selection. Picking from right to left, again, just a click, would be as soon as that boundary crosses something, it gets selected. Right to left, it's green with a dotted line. There's also this funny one where you hold down and drag, and it starts creating sort of a lasso where you can pick things like that. Those would probably be easier just to pick, pick one at a time to do it. I hardly ever use that. In any case, when you're using the move command, you hit enter and AutoCAD realizes that you're done picking things, and then you can do whatever you need to do with them. There are a couple things you can do with any object. Line, just using its grips. When you select an object, it's got really two kinds of grips. One is just its one that changes its position. That's usually located near its center, and the other that move its endpoints, which are called vertices, whether if it's of a line or a rectangle. With a rectangle is a little more complicated. I've got grips on each of the sides, which can be moved around. If you don't want them to be skewed like that, you can turn ortho on so that when I pick it, it only goes horizontally or vertically. So ortho shows up a bunch of different times. With ortho turned on, I can drag this out to here. Just grip editing. With ortho turned off, I can take it out in both dimensions at one time. Circles, the center one to move it, any of the outside quadrant points to make it larger or smaller. And you'll see that if, as I'm doing that, it's giving me the actual number there. So I could say 2 feet, and it would, I don't have to enter any command. I'm just working right with the grips themselves. And if you remember that a vector is just a distance and a direction, we can use that not only to draw things, but also to move things. For instance, if I wanted to move these two that far, whatever it is, I can select them, type move, and then use these 2 points as the reference for that move. So each of them moves that exact same distance and direction. Stretching works not on objects, but on the vertices, the endpoints and centers of objects. So what I want to do, I realize that I'm 10 feet, it really should have been 12 feet. So I'll use the stretch command, which is, I can modify stretch. And what I'm doing is putting a window around that vertex, that vertex, that vertex, that vertex, and the control points of those dimensions. And then I'm going to lock into my vertical and say, I want that to be, I want to move that up 2 feet. Change it from 10 feet to 12 feet. So in the process of that, all the dimensions increased by 2 feet, all these dimensions, and this one increased to whatever that is, being farther away than it was before. You can use stretch just as a design tool. See what that looks like over here. Would that be a better design solution? Because you can use it to fix things or just to try things out. AutoCAD has lots of different commands, like 1,000, somebody said. Some of them are actual tools and their options. Some of them are settings, like what color is the wall layer and how big is the dimension text and stuff like that. We're just going to use like 5 or 6, just the ones I've been using here today, to do an exercise that's on the back of this last page, which is sort of a preview of what the homework exercise will be. The difference being I've got some freestanding columns, a round one and a square one. Let's maybe do this together and just see where we get.